Hi and welcome back to this final video on the history of computers, the user revolution. Fortunately for Apple, it had another great idea. One of the Apple II's strongest suits was its sheer user friendliness. For Steve Jobs, developing truly easy to use computers became a personal mission in the early 1980s. What truly inspired him was a visit to Palo Alto Research Center, a cutting-edge computer laboratory run as a division of the Xerox Corporation. Xerox had started developing computers in the early 1970s, believing they would make paper obsolete. One of Park's research projects was an advanced $40,000 computer called the Xerox Alto. Unlike most microcomputers launched in the 1970s, which were programmed by typing in text commands, the Alto had a desktop-like screen with little picture icons that could be moved around with a mouse. It was the very first graphical user interface (GUI), and an idea conceived by Alan Kay 1940 and now used in virtually every modern computer. The Alto borrowed some of its ideas, including the mouse, from the 1960s computer pioneer Douglas Engelhart 1925-2013. Back at Apple, Jobs launched his own version of the Alto project to develop an easy-to-use computer called Pitt's Person in the Street. The machine became the Apple Lisa, launched in January 1983, the first widely available computer with a GUI desktop, with a retail price of $10,000, over 3 times the cost of an IBM PC. The Lisa was a commercial flop, but it paved the way for a better, cheaper machine called the Macintosh that Jobs unveiled a year later, in January 1984, with its memorable launch ad for the Macintosh inspired by George Orwell's novel 1984, directed by Ridley Scott. Apple took a swipe at IBM's monopoly, criticizing what it portrayed as the firm's domineering, even totalitarian approach. Big Blue was really Big Brother. Apple promised a very different vision. On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh, and you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984. The Macintosh was a critical success and helped invent the new field of IBM, pushing in the mid-1980s, yet it never came close to challenging IBM's position. Ironically, Jobs' easy-to-use machine also helped Microsoft to dislodge IBM as the world's leading force in computing. When Bill Gates saw how Macintosh worked with its easy-to-use picture icon desktop, he launched Windows, an upgraded version of his MS-DOS software. Apple saw this as blatant plagiarism and filed a $5.5 billion copyright lawsuit in 1988. 4 years later, the case collapsed when Microsoft effectively securing the right to use the Microsoft look-feel in all present and future versions of Windows. Microsoft Windows 95 system, launched 3 years later, had an easy-to-use Macintosh-like desktop and MS-DOS running behind the scenes. So that's it for this series on the history of computers. I hope you liked listening to it. Thank you for taking the time, and don't forget to please like and subscribe. Thanks very much.